Manchester United's poor results under Ruben Amorim isn't just a result of a managerial transition. While Amorim has his own tactical preferences and growing pains, the squad he inherited is largely tailored to a completely different philosophy of football. We're going to look at 5 reasons why recruitment is one of the main issues why Manchester United find themselves in the situation that they are this season. Number 1. Signings tailored for Erik ten Hag's system. Erik ten Hag built a squad designed for possession-based structured football with vertical passing and aggressive pressing. Players like Andre Onana, Antony, Mason Mount and even Lisandro Martinez were bought in specifically because they fit Erik ten Hag's system. But Amorim plays a completely different style. More reliant on wing-backs, fluid front threes and quick transition, the current squad simply lacks the right profiles to implement his idea effectively. And this hasn't just happened under Ruben Amorim. We've seen this now under countless managers over the last 10 to 12 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left, where the recruitment strategy is very short-term based. And you go from Louis van Gaal to Jose Mourinho to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to Ralf Rangnick to Erik ten Hag to Ruben Amorim, all completely different styles of football. And the recruitment strategy for each manager has been based solely around how that manager wants to play. So I don't think this is anything new. However, there is stark differences between the way Erik ten Hag plays and the way Ruben Amorim plays, like we just mentioned. And I think if Manchester United going forward are to get their recruitment right, and I think they have gotten absolutely better since Ineos have come in, we're going to have a long-term idea and a long-term strategy around recruitment and the types of players we bring in based on how Manchester United want to play football going forward. And we've seen an awful lot of this with some lesser clubs. Southampton had it for a long time. We see it now with Brighton, even Bournemouth, Brentford, these types of clubs. They want to play a specific way and they buy players to fit the way that the club wants to play. So if a manager changes at any point, you get a manager in that also suits the way the club wants to play football and the identity that they have. So the big transitions are not there anymore. And the 2 and 3 year rebuilds don't exist within the club, because when you change managers, he's coming in with very similar ideas to the previous manager left with. Number 2. Bloated, unbalanced squad. Erik ten Hag's recruitment left behind a very unbalanced squad. Too many attacking midfielders, not enough natural width, and no consistent striker solution. And also an over-reliance on ageing or injury-prone players in key positions. Ruben Amorim walked into a dressing room that looked more like a patchwork of panic buys than a coherent squad. And I think this is really, really easy to see. And we know, even with the new ownership coming in, they didn't like, for example, Jim Ratcliffe didn't like the Casemiro signing. And again, there was an awful lot of that over previous regimes and previous managers where panic buys were part of the strategy nearly. You had one idea and one strategy and one maybe player you were identifying, and you went after him for a long period of time. Frankie de Jong is a major one here. And when that doesn't happen and you don't get them by the end of the transfer window, and Erik ten Hag's first couple of games was a huge example of this, you panic buy, you go buy Casemiro, and you're going out then and buying age-related players. You go all the way back to Louis van Gaal here. You're talking about your Di Marias. While he was probably in his prime at the time, you could also look at the likes of Falcao, who was past his best. You look at Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who was past his best. You look at Edison Cavani, who was past his best. While all of these were very good footballers in their heyday, they come to Manchester United and see it nearly as a retirement project. And I think if Manchester United going forward can correct these errors, and I do think they are doing that, we're seeing an awful lot of young players coming in, even academy players that are coming in for very cheap money, that have high ceilings and high potential going forward, then I do think you will see an overall improvement on that. You do have to have your certain amount of experience signings, and not every player that's signed can be under 25 years of age, because you've got to sprinkle in some experience within the squad. But I do think that we are going to see, still for another couple of maybe transfer windows, a hangover from the previous regime and a scattergun approach to going out and signing players. Number 3. High spending, low output. Man United spent huge money under Erik ten Hag. Almost 600 million spent, yet very few of those players are delivering consistently. Antony is arguably one of the biggest flops in the club's recent history, and Casemiro is showing signs of physical decline, and of course Andre Onana has been heavily criticised for his performances of late. Now when it comes to Ruben Amorim, he has been forced to make do with underperforming or ill-fitting signings, and he's paying the price on the pitch. Could Ruben Amorim change his tactics? Absolutely he could, and some of the criticism has been come towards him, and why isn't he doing that to maybe tailor towards these players? But I'm backing him 100% in what he says here. He is saying that if we go back and I change my ideas and I change my philosophy, then we're back to square one. And previous managers have done that. Ten Hag done it, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer done it, Jose Mourinho done it, Van Gaal done it. And it just allows the players to get out of jail free again. And I think Ruben Amorim is sticking to his guns. Now, when we're talking about high spending, I think since Ineos have come in, I thought they've bought quite well, in my opinion. If you look at the players that we signed last year, De Ligt, Mazraoui, Manuel Ugarte, Lenny Yoro and Joshua Zirkzee have all performed quite well this season. And then when you see the players that have come in January, Dorgu and Aidan Heaven, one is for the future and Dorgu is, putting in some good consistent performances. I think this issue stems back to before Ineos came in. And you're talking about the Casemiro signings. You're talking about the Antony signings, the Harry Maguires, the Jadon Sanchos, the Lukakus, the Paul Pogbas. These huge signings that massively underperform at Manchester United. And now we're seeing the consequences of that with FFP and what we've spent and how fickle we've been in terms of regulating the books at Manchester United under the Glazers. And Ineos do need to get this right. Now we can see the cuts have come and they continue to come, and I do think there will be a clear out in terms of the playing staff as well. When you look at the likes of trying to get Rashford off the books with the wages he's earning, Casemiro also, all of these have to be taken into account, and we've got to get them under control. Because you've got to be financially stable if you're to go out and improve the squad as quickly as you possibly can. So this is something that really needs to be looked at and taken care of over the next couple of years. Number 4, limited flexibility for Amorim. And this reiterates the fact of what we just mentioned. Due to FFP constraints and the clubs still being tied financially to the Ten Hag era signings, to the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer signings, even as far back as the Jose Mourinho signings, Amorim hasn't had the freedom to shape the team in his image. Now, again, you could say he hasn't had a summer transfer window yet, but it does look like it's going to be heavily restricted. He's trying to implement a complex tactical style while being stuck with square pegs and round holes, and that's a recipe for inconsistency. And I think an awful lot will depend on what our sales are like this summer. We know that, of course, Rashford, Sancho, Antony are all on loan, and the potential for them to go on a permanent deal is there in the summer. We need to start generating some good money, and I think if you take a lot of the high wages off of the books as well, it does free up an awful lot of money within the transfer window. And I think if we're talking about moving on maybe one or two of the academy graduates, Garnacho is a big example of this, and there's been talks of Napoli coming back in for around 50 million. If you're talking about 50 million of pure profit for an academy graduate, you can go out and spend probably well over 100 million on the back of that. So we do need to be quite smart in the transfer window coming up, but Ruben Amorim certainly does have his hands tied, and we do need about 6 to 7 players that need to be coming in and going straight into that first team if we're to get anywhere near getting into that top 4 next season. And number 5, cultural hangover. Ten Hag's leadership style reportedly created divides within the Manchester United dressing room. Now, this is not the first manager to have done that. Jose Mourinho stands out, absolutely. And you talk about Louis van Gaal being a disciplinarian as well. However, you also have the other side of it with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was probably a little bit more laid back and allowed the dressing room to run itself a little bit and was kind of pally and friendly with everybody. But I don't think that benefited Manchester United either. With Ten Hag favouring former Ajax players, rigid dressing room control and a lack of adaptability, that culture doesn't vanish overnight. And Ruben Amorim has not just inherited a squad, but a dressing room dynamic that might not be fully bought into the new direction just yet. And this is a big concern for Ruben Amorim, and it's something that is going to take a lot of time for him to get right. And he has mentioned it on countless occasions. He's talking about setting standards. He's talking about changing the culture. And I think not just within the dressing room, but the whole club needs a cultural change. But it starts with Ruben Amorim. He's got to get it right within the dressing room. He's got to get rid of the players that don't fit his system, the players that don't have the right attitude. I do think the dressing room is a lot healthier than it was maybe even 18 months ago, when you had the likes of Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, Jesse Lingard, you know, off the back of the Paul Pogba era. You know, it was a really, really poor dressing room, and I think it has improved an awful lot. You do have some good pros within the dressing room. Harry Maguire, for example, might not be the greatest player in the world, but a very good pro. Bruno Fernandes. People talk about Diogo Dalot being a really, really good professional. Casemiro has won it all as well. So there are good characters within that dressing room. But Ruben Amorim has a massive, massive job on his hands to bring about a cultural shift and bring a bit of belief back to Manchester United and that dressing room. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Do you think recruitment is the main reason for where Manchester United find themselves at the moment? Or do you think there is more options to it, or there's more reasons for it? Let me know in the comment section below. Please just smash a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you on the next one.